Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roach Jeffrey, and subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Now, we just passed 530 subs. Thank you guys so much for all the support, and I hope I can continue to make great content you guys will enjoy in the future. Now, the transfer portal is going crazy right now in college basketball. I haven't been able to cover it too much because we just had the end of the college basketball season. There's so much going on with all of that in March Madness. But now the transfer portal is the big attention getter in college basketball because the season is over, and I'm going to go over all the transfer moves that have just happened. There's so many big moves, and I'm going to be covering more of the portal additions and moves that happen in the future. But starting out today, we have Jamison entering the transfer portal from Minnesota, and he just committed to Ohio State today. That is a huge addition for the Buckeyes because Jamison is a really solid player. He averaged 12.4 points per game for the Golden Gophers last season, and he averaged 17 points per game the season before that. I think he had some injury issues going on this past season, and plus Minnesota was a worse team overall all around, which I think hurt his efficiency. But he's a great three-point shooter. He's shooting around 36% from his career from the three-point line. That's a really good percentage, and I think that Jamison will have a really good shot to be a great player for Ohio State next season because he's going to have more talent around him. He's a 6'7" forward that can shoot the basketball. And you look at Ohio State, they're losing Justice Sueing. He's out of eligibility. He's a 6'6" forward, so Jamison could really fill in that position well for the Buckeyes. And Chris Holtmann probably do a better job than Justice Sueing did. And they're losing Bryce Sensabaugh as well to the NBA draft. More than likely, he does still have his college eligibility option open, but more than likely he will go pro. And if he does, the position is wide open for Jamison to have a lot of success. Ohio State really needed a forward that could shoot threes, and it looks like the Buckeyes have got their transfer addition in Jamison and the Ohio State Buckeyes, they need a little bit more in the transfer portal potentially to have more success. They do have a really good recruiting class coming in for four-star freshmen, and they still have Felix Okpar, Zed Key as well, so they still have some solid players all around, and Bruce Thornton. So I think that you look at the Buckeyes overall, they have a really solid team and could potentially be an NCAA tournament team next year, and if they are, Jamison will be a big reason why. But yesterday, Kerr Krissa entered the transfer portal from the Arizona Wildcats, and he committed to the West Virginia Mountaineers yesterday, and that's a huge addition for Bob Huggins because you look at West Virginia, they have had bad guard play for the past few seasons. Since Deuce McBride and Javon Carter came through the program, West Virginia has not had great guard play. Joe Toussaint transferred from Iowa last year to West Virginia, and he's a solid guard, but he's definitely not a player you want starting. He's more of a bench player, and he probably will be returning for West Virginia next season. But the Mountaineers also have Trey Mitchell, and they have some other solid players as well. You don't want to let all that talent go to waste. West Virginia made the tournament last year, and bringing in Kerr Krissa is huge. And I think Kerr Krissa might have left Arizona because he was possibly being pushed for the starting job by Colin Boswell, who will be the starting point guard for Arizona next season, while Jamison left Minnesota because of the poor play of the Golden Gophers, and he wanted a fresh start on a better basketball team in Ohio State. Kerr Krissa is not leaving Arizona for that. Arizona is a great program, and West Virginia is definitely a step down, but now Kerr Krissa might be able to showcase his talents because he's a great player. He averaged 10 points per game both of the last two seasons for the Arizona Wildcats, and he shoots around 35% from three, which is pretty good for a high-volume shooter like he is. And I think that West Virginia made the tournament last year with the players that they had. They'll have a really good chance to make the tournament again. And I think the Mountaineers could end up moving up the ladder in the Big 12, considering there's going to be a lot of roster flux in the Big 12 this season. Some teams could take a step back. West Virginia seems to be trending in the right direction. It looks like they're going to get most of their players back, and Kerr Krissa is a fantastic addition because he's a really good guard who shoots a good percentage from three, and he's a good facilitator, and I think this is a splash addition for Bob Huggins. The next player on the list that entered the transfer portal recently and committed to a program is Keyon Menifield Jr. from Washington, who just committed to Arkansas. He averages 10 points per game and 3 assists, and what's really good for Eric Musselman is that he's a really good coach bringing in players from the transfer portal. He's had a lot of success in the past couple of seasons, bringing in players like Justin Smith from Indiana over to Arkansas and Ricky Council from Wichita State to Arkansas this past season, so he has the track record of bringing in players from the portal and having a lot of success. But also, you look at a player like Jamison or Kerr Krissa, they're older players that won't have as much eligibility left. Keyon Menifield Jr. was just a true freshman last year for Washington, put up 10 points per game, had a lot of success on a bad basketball team, and now he's getting to go to Arkansas, where the Razorbacks have been great, making the Sweet 16 the last 3 years with Eric Musselman at head coach. You're going to be losing Anthony Black and Nick Smith to the NBA draft. Both fantastic players. Now Keyon Menifield Jr. can come in, potentially have a lot of success for Arkansas, lead the Razorbacks to the tournament. And you know Eric Muslim is going to get a few more players in the transfer portal. And if Keyon Menifield has a lot of success, he could go to the NBA draft in his sophomore season as well, which would be huge for him and for the Razorback program overall. Being able to keep bringing in players, and Eric Muslim gets into the NBA draft, which is where players want to go. I think the Razorbacks are in great shape right now. They keep bringing in good players, and things are trending in the right direction. The Razorbacks should be a good team next year, especially if they have a lot less injuries. If Trevon Brazil's able to play all season long and some of their other players stay healthy, the Razorbacks will definitely be an NCAA tournament team next season. Next transfer that you have is Eddie Lampkin transferring from TCU to Colorado. There was a lot of interesting stuff that happened with Eddie Lampkin as he exited the TCU Horned Frogs. Horned Frogs have had a lot of success the last few seasons, and Eddie Lampkin, he was a pretty solid player. He averaged 6 points per game, but he had a fallout with Jamie Dixon. But now he's at Colorado, and Tab Boyle is actually quietly assembling a roster that could be dangerous in the Pac-12 this season, especially if Arizona potentially takes a step back, or UCLA. But those two programs are great, and they should be continuing to get transfer portal additions themselves, where they'll be at the top of the Pac-12. But you got Colorado bringing in Cody Williams, a 5-star recruit, and you also look at Tristan Da Silva, he's back, KJ Simpson as well, and now you're bringing in Eddie Lampkin. Colorado's quietly building a roster that could potentially be top 25 good, and an NCAA tournament team, which will be Colorado's first NCAA tournament appearance in a few seasons. Tab Boyle's a good coach, but he needs a really good year if he wants to keep his job. I think he is a solid coach, but he's building something at the Buffaloes right now in Boulder, Colorado, and Eddie Lampkin's a solid addition. He averages 6 points and a few rebounds. He's just a solid, tough player. He's a big body. It's really tough to stop, and he should wreak some havoc in the Pac-12, especially playing alongside Cody Williams, who would get a lot of attention in his own right. So I think this is a good move for Eddie Lampkin and a great move for Colorado if they want to make the tournament next season. Now, some of the other transfer portal additions that have happened recently, maybe about a week ago, I'll go over as well, just really quick because I wasn't able to get to them earlier. Jamir Nelson Jr., that's a big transfer portal name. Jamir Nelson Sr.'s son. He transferred from Delaware to TCU. He averaged 20 points per game and 4 assists. And now that Mike Miles has gone to the NBA draft, TCU needed a big bucket getter to replace what Mike Miles did for TCU. And getting Jamir Nelson Jr. is the perfect transfer addition. He should really help out TCU to be able to make a run to potentially make the NCAA tournament next season. TCU probably will take a step back next year, but overall, Jamir Nelson Jr., he's going to have to adjust to the Power 5 level, going from Delaware to TCU, but I think he should. He's a great player, averaging 21 points per game in a small school, and it should translate to around 12 to 14 points per game at TCU, and I think he will be a great addition for the TCU Horned Frogs to replace Mike Miles' fantastic production. Tyler Nichols transferred from North Carolina to Virginia Tech, and he averaged 2 points per game at North Carolina, but he should be able to shine more at Virginia Tech. Tyler Nichols is behind a lot more talented players at North Carolina. He should be able to go to Virginia Tech and be able to have some success. Will Tyler Nichols be the reason Virginia Tech gets back to the NCAA tournament? Probably not, but if Virginia Tech can stay healthy and have a roster that has a lot of good players next year and be able to potentially play better basketball than they did this past season, and I do think that Tyler Nichols could be a good contributor that helps the Hokies get back to the NCAA tournament. Another transfer portal additions, Peyton Sparks, transferred from Ball State to Indiana. He averaged 13.3 points per game last year and 8 rebounds for Ball State. And again, same thing as a Jamir Nelson Jr. You're going from a smaller school to a bigger school. And is that production going to translate over for Peyton Sparks, averaging 13 points per game from Ball State over to Indiana? Probably not. He's probably going to be a guy that averages 6 to 8 points per game for the Hoosiers this season. But Indiana's looking at a lot of really good players in the transfer portal right now. And if Peyton Sparks is coming off the bench and he's not a starter, then this is a really good depth piece for the Hoosiers to potentially help them get back to the tournament. Amari Burnett transferred from Alabama to Michigan, and he's averaging 6 points per game. And Amari Burnett was a former 5-star recruit, and he's a fantastic player, but he's had a lot of injury issues throughout his career, and he never got it all together at Texas Tech and Alabama. And I think that him going to Michigan could be a huge addition for the Wolverines because Michigan's losing Jet Howard to the NBA draft, and they're also losing Hunter Dickinson to the transfer portal and Kobe Buffkin to the NBA draft as well. So Michigan's losing a lot of talent. Bringing in Amari Burnett, no, he might not be your best player next season, but he could be a guy that maybe steps up and averages 8 to 10 points per game next year and could be a big piece to help the Wolverines get back to the NCAA tournament if things go well for Juwan Howard. He can get other really good players in the transfer portal as well. And a couple of other additions, Mike Mitchell transferred from Pepperdine to Minnesota. He averaged 11 points per game, and Mike Mitchell's a solid player, but Minnesota needs all the help they can get right now, and this addition will definitely help out Minnesota potentially have a player that could help the Gophers maybe rise up the ladder in the Big Ten, but Minnesota's definitely going to have to get a couple more splashy transfer additions if they want to make the tournament again. Talon Cooper transferred from Minnesota to South Carolina. He averaged 10 points per game And Mike Mitchell, the addition for Minnesota is because they lost Talon Cooper going to South Carolina. Talon Cooper was a good player at Minnesota, averaging 10 points per game. He was solid as a freshman, but Minnesota overall is a struggling basketball team. I think South Carolina has some struggles of their own. They're losing Gigi Jackson to the NBA draft, so I think that the Gamecocks are going to have to do a lot to be able to replace that talent, but I do think Talon Cooper could be a solid addition that helps the Gamecocks stay competitive in the SEC. And Paxton Welsh is transferring from Brown to North Carolina. He averaged 14 points per game last year. And Paxton Welsh, he's not going to be able to replace the talent that Caleb Love is leaving from the North Carolina Tar Heels and the production that Caleb Love had. But Paxton Welsh is definitely going to be a guy that's going to average probably 7 to 9 points per game, be a solid rotational player for the Tar Heels, and maybe be able to help the Tar Heels play more team basketball to help the Tar Heels get back to the NCAA tournament this next season, especially if North Carolina can get a couple more good transfers from the portal that will really help out the Tar Heels next year. And overall, looking at the transfer portal, there's a lot of big names right now, especially Kerr Krissa and Jamison that have just dropped, from Kerr Krissa going to Arizona to West Virginia, and Jamison going from Minnesota to Ohio State. But there's so many other big transfer portal additions as I just outlined, so many great players. I'll continue to cover the portal as more players move and more transfer additions happen for a lot of programs. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Caleb Love still in the portal, Khalil Ware, so many great players that are in the portal, and it's all going to get more interesting from here. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in the transfer portal and which teams get really good players that will maybe help their team improve next season, and which teams might be hurt by the portal, losing some players that they won't be able to replace. But it will be interesting, but I'll be covering it all here. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about the transfer portal right now, which addition you think is the biggest, if it's Kerr Krissa, Jamison or some other player, and what you think about all the moves so far, and what you think potentially could happen in the transfer portal in the future. Follow me on Twitter as well, link in the description, and I will see you next time.